Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday to you. This is Josh of Severe Weather. I'm a meteorologist in Raleigh, North Carolina, and welcome to my channel today. For those of you who have been following me for a while, we've been talking for the last few days about the uptick in severe weather coming later this week into the weekend. And things are starting to come together for what could be one of our most substantial severe weather outbreaks in perhaps up to a year over portions of the deep south. Last season, we saw a ton in the plains in Oklahoma, Nebraska, not quite as much as we might have seen in previous years in the southeast. Unfortunately, this storm system is going to be packing a punch with it, and we now have moderate risk levels 4 out of 5 for severe weather in the Mississippi Valley for tomorrow and tomorrow night. That is Friday. And then across portions of Dixie Alley, the deep south for Saturday. And the risk continues for severe weather into Sunday over the eastern seaboard as well. So I'm going to share my screen with you. This is going to be a shorter video, and I'm just going to walk you through the basics now that we have some models coming in here. We're not going to get super technical, but I will explain things to you. So I appreciate you joining me. And if you could subscribe to this channel, I very much would appreciate that as well. Get the word out here, as this is going to be a dangerous situation for millions of Americans. Here is a look right now at our satellite loop, and you can see here pretty quiet in most of the eastern United States. We do have a disturbance moving through the southeastern U.S. That's producing some marginal severe weather with it. We had some rough weather overnight in parts of East Texas and Arkansas, but that is, for the most part, not the main event. The one that is coming into California now is going to be what we have to deal with tomorrow over the plains. And then there's a feature right behind it here that is getting ready to move onshore, California, that's going to race right behind it and cause a second wave to move up into the southeastern United States. And eventually it's all going to move eastward here as we head into the day on Sunday and early on Monday. Across the country, you can see the warm air is spilling northward here. Let me refresh just to get you the latest temperatures, but we do have 90s in South Texas, even triple digits right across the Rio Grande, 80s across DFW up to Oklahoma and Louisiana, 70s across the rest of the southeast. And this warm air is going to get lifted northward from the Gulf into the Mississippi River Valley tomorrow, which will basically displace the chilly air that's in place for now. Now, there is colder air in the western U.S. that will follow quickly behind this storm. So with this huge contrast, this huge battle zone of warm air coming out of the Gulf and colder air returning from Canada and the Rockies, we are going to see a strong pressure gradient and a strengthening storm system that will become what we call a bomb cyclone, and that it's going to deepen very quickly, and winds are going to quickly pick up here overnight tonight into tomorrow in the plains. And as we deal with severe weather in some places here tomorrow afternoon, we may be dealing with snow by Saturday and Saturday evening in some of the same areas of the Dakotas and western Minnesota. The only place that is not benefiting from this mild weather outside of the western U.S. is the Northeast. We had a backdoor front drop south, and temps are stuck in the 40s in the mid-Atlantic area, 50s in Virginia. You've got to get west of the Appalachians before it starts to warm back up in places like Pittsburgh, and Lake Erie is keeping Erie chilly in the lower 40s. So we're going to start off with key messages for what's going to happen tomorrow. This area is very concerning as we've got a very quick developing storm system, which is going to race quickly east and northeastward. As a result, we're going to see a lot of wind damage, possibly even getting close to the verge of having a derecho, which is a long-lasting complex of storms that produces widespread wind damage. Gusts may get as high as 90 miles per hour, and that is in the area here that is in the blue dashed area. The area that is likely to see the worst of it will be southeastern Iowa, central and southern Illinois, eastern Missouri, even northeast Arkansas, western Kentucky, and western Tennessee. There's also going to be a threat for baseball-sized hail early on in the evening. And of course, when you have winds this strong and storms moving this quickly, there's just enough rotation where parts of this line of storms could create brief tornadoes. And with the fast wind flow aloft, while we say these tornadoes are brief, that doesn't mean they're not going to be strong. In fact, we could see several segments of this line of storms that produces tornadoes beyond EF1, maybe EF2, EF3 tornadoes, which is a significant amount of damage. And unfortunately, a lot of that is going to be coming after dark tomorrow night. If you're in Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, possibly even as far south here as Jackson, Mississippi. And overnight, there's even a chance for a few tornadoes moving into Alabama and Middle Tennessee in an area that's not just going to get hit tomorrow night, but unfortunately could get hit worse as we get into Saturday. So the main takeaways here is that this system is going to be developing quickly, moving very quickly, and it is not something you're going to be able to outrace. It is not going to be safe to storm chase. Unfortunately, this is a very quick mover, and will produce a widespread a swath of damage across the central United States. And there's a risk that we could even have severe weather as far north as Lake Superior and as far west now as eastern Nebraska. In fact, Omaha and Lincoln are now in the slight risk. That has all been adjusted west as the system quickly unravels itself here as we get into tomorrow afternoon. Kansas City is in that risk as well. So is Springfield and Little Rock. And Louisiana, we could have some severe weather overnight, but I think most of it's going to stay to the north of you there. Unfortunately, it's not just the severe weather tomorrow, but the increasingly strong winds behind the storm system that are going to create power outages. They're going to create very low humidity and very dangerous conditions. We are likely to see new fires spreading quickly here. It's going to fan the flames, unfortunately, for whatever does develop. And this is a very critical setup here if you're in West Texas, Oklahoma, and southern Kansas, eastern New Mexico as well, and southeastern Colorado. Just a very nasty setup here for wildfires. So in places where we're not dealing with severe weather, we're going to deal with high winds. We're going to deal with critical fire weather conditions as well. Now, unfortunately, it looks like, not to ignore what's going to happen tomorrow, but it looks like Saturday has potentially a higher ceiling to it, especially in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, and maybe even parts of Tennessee and Georgia. I do expect, if the models continue to trend the direction that they are right now, and if we get enough sunlight and dry out in the morning Saturday, which is looking like it's more possible, that this could end up being a rare high-risk day, 5 out of 5. Supercell storms are going to form in the warm sector. We're going to have enough heating and moisture coming out of the Gulf. And as a result, there is definitely an increased potential for not just tornadoes, but strong tornadoes that track over a couple of states, over several counties, and produce widespread damage with them. It's tough to really compare to things in the past. The system hasn't happened yet. Obviously, this area got hit really hard back in 2011 in April. It's been hit many times since then. We're no stranger to tornadoes, but this is going to be the real deal, unfortunately. And you can see the area in red does include New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Mandeville, Hattiesburg, Jackson, Laurel, Mississippi, Meridian, Tuscaloosa, Demopolis, Birmingham, Montgomery, even Mobile, Alabama has this risk for strong tornadoes. And if you're not in the red, you're not out of the woods, unfortunately. Anybody in this dashed area here has the potential to see a strong tornado. That includes Clarksville and Nashville, Tennessee. That includes Natchez and Vicksburg, Mississippi, Houma, Thibodaux, Lafayette, Louisiana, Tallahassee, possibly overnight, Panama City and Pensacola for sure. I am concerned if this holds together that western Georgia, Atlanta, maybe even Macon could get hit hard overnight, Saturday night, while folks are sleeping. We're talking higher population centers that are getting hit in the middle of the night. So if you're anywhere in this area, in the orange and the red, you need to take this extremely seriously. If you're in the yellow, you could have problems as well, even all the way up to Cleveland, maybe even close to Detroit and Toledo, and as far east as Pittsburgh and Charleston, West Virginia overnight. And unfortunately, the Western Carolinas, the mountains of North Carolina could get hit hard as well with severe weather, but also strong sustained winds as this system moves through overnight. So make sure, no matter what you do, you've got multiple ways of receiving a warning. Even if it doesn't go to a high risk, it's just a moderate risk. I don't think that matters. This is going to be one of those top 10 days of the year that has severe weather, and you need to take it very seriously. So I really hope everybody's taking the proper precautions here. Now, looking at the rest of the country, we do have a major winter storm hitting California in the western U.S., heavy rain affecting southern Cal. We've had a few isolated tornadoes there as well. Not really a ton of flooding, but certainly some heavy rain. The heavy snow spreads on into the Rockies, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Arizona here tonight, tomorrow. And then you can see the areas in pink and brown all indicate red flag warnings, high wind watches and warnings, and dangerous winds expected, even gusty winds all the way into the Midwest here. And East Tennessee and Western North Carolina are going to see those heavy winds as well. Now let's talk about the setup here for our storm system. What's driving everything? What's causing things to be so abruptly bad here? Well, you can see our disturbance right now moving to the east is weakening. There's a weak ridge of high pressure that builds in overnight into tomorrow in the eastern U.S., so it's going to warm right back up. But then we see an intense trough digging all the way down into North Texas as we get into tomorrow morning. And this is taking on the shape of a negative tilt, meaning it's tilted from northwest to southeast, meaning it's going to be able to pull up moisture from the Gulf, and wind speeds aloft are going to increase. As a result, we're going to have low pressure quickly strengthening as it tracks northeastward here as this upper level feature continues right on into Saturday over the Great Lakes. And behind it, you see this trough approaching from the west. That's going to bring colder air in, wrapping it behind our storm center and bringing back the heavy snow and the low visibility and the blizzard conditions. Unfortunately, though, after this storm moves and lifts off to the north and east, the atmosphere is allowed to recover on Saturday morning, meaning Gulf moisture gets pushed northward. We see some heating, and then our wind field increases with our next trough that comes in right behind it. So it's a 1-2 punch here. And punch number 2 is hitting at the right time of day for this to produce a widespread severe weather outbreak in the deep south here as we get to later Saturday and into Sunday, and possibly even earlier on Saturday morning, depending on how quickly this trough ejects and how quickly storms can form. As this trough lifts northeast, it is going to lose the negative tilt. It will still produce extreme wind with it aloft. And so we can count on severe weather all the way up the eastern seaboard for the day on Sunday. Here's a look at the lower level winds, 850 millibars. That's about 10,000 feet, give or take. And we don't see that diagrammed for the Rockies because they're above that pressure level. That doesn't mean anything really at this point. But what you can see here is that the wind speeds out of the south and south-southwest start picking up in Texas overnight tonight. This is 3 to 4 in the morning. And then we see the wind field continuing to quickly expand northeastward. So our storm deepens, the wind field increases, and now we've got wind speeds of 80 knots or stronger at 850 millibars by early to mid-afternoon tomorrow in Missouri. That area lifts north, and we see that area continuing to expand here. And we have very strong flow out of the south Friday evening in southern Illinois. In fact, the kind that will produce those 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts, just because we have a ton of wind energy to tap into here. Strong southwesterly flow and some directional wind shear as well. So this is ideal to see some tornadoes, but also widespread wind damage. It does weaken by Saturday morning some as it lifts into Ohio and Michigan. It doesn't mean there's not going to be severe weather. It won't be quite as intense. But then the next piece comes through Saturday afternoon, and this is the area that we really have to be concerned with. In fact, if I pull up a sounding here, which I can't really do on the NAM. I'll show you in a little bit, though. You'll see that the wind fields are just out of this world. What we call hodographs, which display wind speed with height, very curved and increasing quickly here. Just some very intense wind fields, peaking in the evening on Saturday night and then lifting northeast into more stable air for Sunday. So a very dynamic storm system in place here. And we do have to take a look at what's called instability. This is storm fuel, how much convective availability there is. CAPE is convective available potential energy in joules per kilogram. It's just a meteorological standard measurement here. And it's starting to climb already in the southeast this afternoon. As we cool tonight, those numbers drop off as you might expect. But tomorrow, we see that area increasing quickly all the way up to Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois. We have values close to 2,000. And so we're going to have a lot of storm fuel to deal with this system as it quickly moves off to the east and northeast. And overnight, there's still plenty of juice in place in the southern portion of this area. So we could have severe winds up here, but we could have tornadoes here where there's more juice to tap into here coming out of the Gulf. As we head into Saturday, we have high numbers to start the day, and they just continue to climb across Mississippi and Louisiana. In fact, I want to show you the deep south so you all can have a better idea of what we're tapping into here for let me go back to the 12s. 18's not in yet all the way. And take a look at this here. It's high tomorrow afternoon, but we don't have a way to get storms to form all the way down here. Farther north, we definitely do. But when we have more of a mechanism here on Saturday, take a look at how much storm fuel is in place. We're looking at incredibly high values for this time of the year, and this will certainly help fuel those storms Saturday and into Saturday night. By the time we get to Sunday morning, there's enough to keep things maintained as they move into Georgia and Florida, although we do see the numbers starting to tail off. And then as we head into Sunday, we don't want to ignore this across the eastern seaboard. There will be some climb in this amount of storm fuel, and we could see a widespread wind damage from northern Florida up into the Carolinas and Virginia by the afternoon. It's not going to be as extreme by this point, but it is going to be high enough to support some severe weather with it. Here's a look at the significant tornado parameter. This is the NAM model, and the important thing to know about this is it calculates wind shear in the lowest 6 kilometers of the atmosphere. That shear does start to climb around lunchtime tomorrow across Missouri, but look how quickly it climbs in the evening hours across Illinois, St. Louis, eastern Iowa, and all the way down into Mississippi Delta region and into Arkansas. And you can see here the numbers are starting to get dangerously high near the Mississippi River here. Now, if storms are faster or slower, then we just have a lot of potential. We don't necessarily have the storms to produce the tornadoes, but right now we're going to act like they are going to happen, and I do think they could. And by the evening, we see this risk maximized here across the boot heel of Missouri, across northeast Arkansas, West Tennessee, western Illinois and Kentucky, and northwestern Mississippi, even down to about Jackson, Mississippi. We see things tailing off some overnight. It doesn't mean there can't be severe weather, but certainly there's a risk for a few isolated storms down here by 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning. But then those numbers start to kick right back up as our next disturbance comes in. And take a look at Saturday morning, already high values in Louisiana and Mississippi, and marginally high values as well in southern Indiana and Kentucky. But by afternoon, this is where things really do take off. And yikes, sorry about that. You can see here, things are going to fade somewhat, and then we're going to see a regeneration here of tornadic parameters here that are actually very high for the afternoon on Saturday, as numbers are off the charts, as high as 17 in central Mississippi. This would be at 3 o'clock central. This is 4 o'clock central, as high as 18 in eastern Mississippi. At 5 o'clock, still as high as 18 in eastern Mississippi, creeping up into Tennessee and western Alabama, and remaining high as we get to dark here on Saturday night. We will see these numbers start to come down some as this moves eastward across Tennessee, eastern Alabama, and Georgia, but that doesn't mean there's no threat. It's just not going to be quite as a widespread threat at that point. At least I don't expect it to be. Here's a look at one of our shorter term models, the HRV model here, I believe, the WRF model, HRW FV3 here. Doesn't mean a whole lot to you other than it's a bunch of scientific jargon, but I want to show you at least where storms are expected to get popping up here. Mid to late afternoons when we start to see more widespread severe weather arcing from Nebraska through Iowa and Missouri. And then we see on the southern end, storms quickly firing in the evening hours in eastern Arkansas, moving into Mississippi and Tennessee. There can be some widespread damage here as far as winds. If you look at a sounding, though, just to see kind of how the wind field is displayed here, you can see there's definitely tornado potential because we have directional wind shear. It's southerly wind at the surface going over to southwesterly at just a few thousand kilometers up, or a few kilometers up, few thousand meters up, and just a very long what we call hodograph, which indicates how the winds continue to very quickly climb. And as a result, the conditions that produce tornadoes are going to be pretty high, to be honest with you. I mean, we're not through the roof, but we're high enough at this point. And this is just the kind of the beginning of things, unfortunately. This is the southern tail, and we don't want to ignore what could happen in southern Illinois, because I do think we have parameters for tornadoes here as well. It's not quite as warm, but it is definitely saturated. We no longer have what's called an elevated mixed layer, which can keep these storms from popping up. We have a pretty good saturated atmosphere from the ground up here that is certainly conducive for tornadoes. Unfortunately, though, as this rolls eastward here, we are going to continue to see the potential for severe weather across Indiana and Kentucky and Tennessee, with some weakening overnight. Now, what we would want to root for at this point to keep the system at bay is a lot of storm activity in this area. This model shows it, but some of the others don't at this point. And the less convection we have in the morning, the more likely we get heating and we get bigger storms to form by midday here. As I show you the southeast, you're going to see what I'm talking about here. So where the sun is out, things can very quickly get explosive across Louisiana and Mississippi. If I pull up Jackson, Mississippi, you are going to see on here that this is a loaded gun situation here. When I say loaded gun, I mean it is set up for stronger tornadoes as these storms roll in through the state here of Mississippi and Louisiana as well. And there could be some long track tornadoes in here. Really hard to look at one model and say exactly where those are going to happen. But if you look at this hodograph, this is just out of this world. There's just so much. There's so much turning in the atmosphere. The storm relative humidity is over 600 in the lowest 3 kilometers. That is enormous. In fact, you can see here, if you plot out storms in the past with that significant tornado potential, there are some that have gotten EF4 or higher. Does that mean that's going to happen in Tupelo or Columbus or Starkville? I don't know yet. But it does mean that potential is certainly there. All right, and one more thing here. Let me take you to the eastern United States. Sorry, I've been moving around all over the place, but we are going to show you that. And you can see here, the NAM is killing this stuff a lot more quickly here Saturday morning and blowing things up a little bit farther to the west Saturday afternoon. But anything that pops up in this area of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama in the afternoon, out ahead of this main line of storms, will likely rotate and become tornadic. We're just going to have to wait and see how that all plays out. But you can see on the NAM model, this low gets down to 987. That's an intense storm. And this is going to bring widespread damaging winds and probably some tornadoes with it. This only runs right now through about 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. The new model is not quite trickled in, and I don't have time to go back, but This is definitely going to be a nasty setup. Not a lot has changed from yesterday's forecast. Looking at the computer learning models from Colorado State, you can see the areas of severe weather yesterday, and here's where we are today. A little bit more of a risk for tornadoes on today's machines in Arkansas and Mississippi and Louisiana, but it hasn't changed the threat at this point. As we go back, though, yeah, let me show you here. Sorry, I was talking about it and I forgot to switch tabs. Yeah, this is the newest run here. So you can see it's a little bit more intense with a 17% chance of a tornado in central Arkansas, kind of the bullseye, 33% chance of hail in southern Missouri, and we have a 38% chance of damaging winds near Memphis, Tennessee. So it's a little bit higher than what we saw in the forecast yesterday. As you can see here, it's come up by about 5 to 10%. But I do want to show you a look here at Saturday, and I believe that was day 4 yesterday. Let me find it for you here. And you can see, obviously, a very concerning forecast yesterday. I showed this to you all in yesterday's video, as much as a 67% chance for severe weather. Well, unfortunately, that has not backed down in today's forecast. As you see here, the threat for severe weather has actually climbed another percent or two. Doesn't matter much at this point, but you can see this is pretty much at the high end of the scale over Mississippi and Alabama here. And as a result, we have that moderate risk. And I do think it could go up to a high risk. One other thing here, I do want to show you the individual hazards based on what the machines are showing. This right here says there's a 32% chance of a tornado and possibly a significant tornado at this bullseye here near Demopolis and east of Meridian, Mississippi. So very concerning, to say the least. Strong threat for hail, 37% Mississippi. So we're not just going to have to deal with tornadoes, but we also can deal with hail. We do see that risk all the way up into the Lake Huron region. And damaging winds certainly are a possibility as well. 46% is the high end here in western Alabama. So that's what we're looking at. Real quick, we're going to wrap this video up because I got to get running. But here's our strong low pressure system. Snow on the backside here by Saturday morning. Heaviest over southwest Minnesota, eastern South Dakota, and then lifting off to the north. Heavy rain as well, lifting up into the Ohio Valley. So we're going to have rounds of severe weather and heavy rain over the Ohio Valley. Here's Sunday, and right now, winds are definitely screaming. We're going to have multiple rounds of gusty winds and heavy rain, but I don't think we're talking a huge risk for tornadoes at this point. And the better news now is that this front is projected to move a little bit quicker, so it's actually moving out of Florida in the morning on Monday, limiting our chance for severe weather. A little bit better news for Central and South Florida, I think. Northern Florida, though, Sunday afternoon, evening, we've got to be mindful of what can happen. Got another big storm that could form towards the middle of next week. I'm going to talk more about that here in videos to come. Finally, let's take a look at wind gusts, just so you all can see these here on the GFS, and not much has changed. We see intense amounts of wind coming through with both waves of storms here. And as I zoom in, so you can see a couple of areas that I'm most concerned with. Here's the first one here for tomorrow morning. Let me zip that back for you. And we see the potential for 60 to 75 mile per hour winds in the southern high plains, even near Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then I'll take you over into the Ohio Valley and the Appalachians so we can see what's to come here. This is Saturday morning or late Friday night, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. And then here's the next wave over the Tennessee Valley and into East Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, Western Virginia. Areas hit by Hurricane Helene are at risk of seeing wind gusts beyond 60 miles per hour. So I'm going to leave you with that. I do want to close out with a quick word of encouragement and a quick Christian prayer, or a quick Christian verse for you all, as I am a Christian, and I think that truly is what matters most, not what I do to help make money and help others, but serving God and serving the kingdom here. But Psalm 121, 7-8 says, "The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore." The Lord is good. There's a lot of evil out there, but by repenting, by turning to the Lord, by trusting Jesus, by knowing the pain that he has gone through, the sacrifices he has made so that we can live eternally. So what happens here on earth really doesn't matter. It's what happens eternally. You've got the choice to make at some point in your lifetime to accept Jesus as your savior. If you don't, I personally am not going to judge you. That is nothing I can do. In fact, you're welcome here regardless of what you believe. I have plenty of friends of different faiths. But what I will say is this: when we get into these difficult times, whether it's politics or economy or extreme dangerous weather, we are still protected by God. He will preserve us. He will bring us closer and closer to Jesus when our time on earth is gone. And that is the good news I wanted to share with you this afternoon before I sign off. Hope everybody has a great Thursday. I'll be back tomorrow. God bless you.